their mind. Small days is a good time. Neighbor and some little children. I when they singing and the dancers really admire them. Small days is still on their mind. Small days is a good time. Neighbor and some little children. I when they singing and the dancers really admire them. Yes, they're singing. Ching, ching, ching. See for mama, with 10 fat chickens. I ask you for one, and she won't give me one. You see that garden named Dorothy? She fat like a butter, and she maggle like a chow. Oh, small days is still on my mind. Small days is a good time. Never had some little children. I'm gonna sing and dance, that's really admire them. What they're singing? On your carpet, you must be like the roses. All you need, bright and shining. You must be, and show me the one. Love the best. When I marry, I give you the ring. First the girls, second the boys. Sunday, Monday, afternoon, we will spend the.
Of course, small days, young people, the youths, and all these different things. This week, we decided to talk about the small days and the youths and how important it is. Folks should pay attention. Folks should pay attention on youths and how to handle the youths. I don't know what's happening, but President Granger, good evening. How are you, sir?
Good evening. It's good to be back on this program and to look forward to see what's going to happen to the next generation. Youth is not just a section of the population. Youth is the future. And I think you've chosen a good topic for tonight. And I'm good, and I look forward to having an educational discussion with you about, maybe 1/3 or more of the Guyanese population, the young people.
Absolutely. And to all of you, wherever you are, good night and welcome to Anansi Web Education. We're talking about youths, and how important they are. They're the next generation. They're now, and we've got to focus on them. And unfortunately, we're not seeing that at all on at least these days. You guys know what I'm talking about. So let's go. The public has been alarmed at the increasing number of young persons who are not in education, employment, training, NEETs, over the past 5 years. And you guys already know what's happening with the young people. It's nothing like back then. Young persons enlisted in Guyana Youth Corps, under the APNU coalition government. They had something to hold on to. They had a future. They could look forward to a bright future. But we're not seeing that now. And let's face reality. We're just not seeing that from 2020 to 2025. Nothing at all. Guyana is a signatory of the Charter of Civil Society for the Caribbean Community in 1997, which requires what? Member states to promote full employment, especially of young people, and to collaborate with the social partners for the provision of creative employment. And mind you, the operative word there is creative employment for young people and for fostering strategies for their employment. Not 10 days and 5 days and 2 days and throw little crumbs here and there. And so tonight on Anansi Web Education, we examine the topic NEETS, NEET, right? Yeah, young persons who are not in education, employment, or training, and aims at explaining the PBPC reluctance to implement the mandate of the CARICOM Charter. And that is what we're doing tonight, to show you that they're reluctant to implement. And this takes me to my first question to President Granger. What are the factors, sir? What factors are responsible for needs? Example, persons who are not in education, employment, or training.
I can only answer your question by saying that the biggest impediment to having an educated youth population, an employed youth population, a trained youth population, is the PPP civic administration. They are the obstacle to getting these young people properly educated, properly employed, and properly trained. And you ask the question, what factors are responsible? Well, that is the biggest factor, government policy. I'm sure every mother would like to see her son, in a good job, self-employed, maybe as a young businessman, as a young farmer, maybe as a professional, an up-and-coming accountant or a doctor or a lawyer, perhaps. But this is not a dream that a large portion of the population would ever see materialize, because many of the young people are in a system that does not guarantee them, does not provide proper education. And many children go to school, but a lot of them fail, even at the age of 10 or 11. In some places in the hinterland, you would be surprised. They don't even have teachers at the national grade 6 level. So to start with, they cannot pass, because sometimes, of 4 subjects, sometimes they only have 2 teachers. So some of them will never pass. And at the CSEC level, at secondary school, again, you see a great degree of underperformance. So the education system is failing, particularly in those 4 hinterland regions: Barima Waini, Region 1, Pataro Separuni, Region 8, the Kayuni Mazruni, Region 7, and the Rupununi. So those 4 regions are the regions of greatest under-education. And the government knows about this. No point talking about a bridge to Suriname. We don't even have a bridge on the Essequibo. It's no point talking about stadium and roundabouts when your children are dropping out of primary school and failing to qualify. So to answer your question, the first factor is the attitude of the PPP civic administration to education. The other thing is employment. The PPP is they created some crazy scheme called, I don't know how you can describe the scheme, the National Pathway Workers Program. It's like something straight out of some communist playbook, but people do not realize it's a bogus scheme. It's a scheme which pays young people $40,000 to work for 10 days. Which young person, which mother would want her son to be working for that amount? Which young person could look forward to raising a family, getting a house, and bringing up children with $40,000? So you go by the street corner, you see these boys, maybe playing some handball or some basketball or something, but they have no job. They have no job because they fell out of the education system, the primary schools, primary and secondary school system. Every day, 15 people drop out, 15 young people drop out of school. So naturally, consequently, at the end of when the schooling comes to an end, one way or the other, they are undereducated. So they can't get a job, so they end up being underemployed and undertrained. And this has been going on. The PPP has been in office for 28 years of the last 33, and they have not been able to solve the problem. So I can answer your question simply by stating that it seems to be a policy of the administration to keep a large part of this population undereducated, underemployed, and undertrained. There is money available to deal with this problem. Instead of building bridge to Suriname, instead of building stadiums and roundabout, think about people, think about young people. There's no point, sending one of your henchmen round the corners, round the streets, getting a few people together, promising them, to go and work with buckets and basins on the highway. We need a serious policy, and there's no national policy which deals with correcting the deficiencies in the national education system and preparing young people for serious employment, not buckets and basins and brooms on the highways. So that's what I would say, that the biggest factor in creating this huge population of NEETS, young person not in education, employment and training is the party in office, the PPP, which does not have a serious policy towards young people. It never had. And it is showing every day that that is not the focus of the PPP. That is not its most serious ministry to look after the education, employment, and training of young people.
Certainly not their focus. We see it sending out a henchman or another henchman, whatever it is, henchman, and to go to the street corners and round these youths up and think that they're doing anything that's good, that has any positive long-term effect. It's not happening under the PPP regime at all. And at least the coalition had a plan, a real plan for young people. Let's go to our second question. Why has the PPP been reluctant to implement measures to promote full employment for young persons? We're not seeing it. And so why? Why?
Well, I would say that the attitude of the PPP is in direct collision or contradiction to even what the CARICOM Charter calls for. The CARICOM Charter calls, and CARICOM Charter of Civil Society makes specific use of full employment, especially for young people. But it requires the state, the government, the PPP administration to collaborate with the social partners for the provision of creative employment for young people and for fostering strategies for their employment. So why is the PPP, not collaborating with civil partners, social partners, to bring about change in the condition of young people? Why are they reluctant to implement measures? This is because it is not in the, to use an overworked expression, it's not in the DNA of the PPP to sit down and speak to the opposition, which is concerned about young people, to speak to trade unions, non-governmental organizations. So the PPP has, on the contrary, far from calling in the opposition and other social partners, as once in 2000, once this new millennium started, PPP greeted the new millennium by abolishing the Guyana National Service, which was an organization which existed for nearly 25 years to train young people. There were centers, there was an organization structure, there were instructions, there were training schools and workshops. PPP just shut it down. Well, when I became president in 2015, I set up the Guyana Youth Corps all over again. The PPP got in 2020, they shut it down. Those young people you see there were actually being trained at the Kurukuru Center. I had announced that the Kurukuru Center would be a youth campus. And this was meant to attract people from all over the country, all 10 regions. And the training had actually started. The PPP just shut it down. What the PPP has done is put ad hoc schemes. They have replaced permanent institutions with ad hocery. So instead of bringing in people and giving them training in an institutional framework, they just give them cash grants. They set up this scheme and they give them these stipends all over the country. And of course, every young person wants to get a stipend. But, giving a child a stipend is different from sending a child to school or sending a child to university. When you go to university, there is order. You attend classes, you receive instructions, you read, study, you are assessed, you graduate, and you're competent when you leave. But when you give people stipends, everybody loves the money, but there's no substance, there's no continuity to their education. So the PPP is reluctant to implement measures because they keep people on life support. They keep the young people on life support, and they cannot become independent citizens They will always want handouts. They will always want little work. And the PPP has done that bit of psychology in which they give people something that is only of short-term benefit. But in education, in secondary school or university, has long-term benefit. But the PPP doesn't aim to create a large core of trained or educated young people. They want to keep the people just as they are, $40,000 a month, you know, pathway, national pathway for workers. It's all ad hocery, and that is the tragedy of the policy that the PPP has adopted.
That's the policy they've adopted. Just wake up and gather a couple of young people, maybe walk in the street corners, pick up a couple of young people, put their henchmen in the PPP regime to talk to young people. You cannot expect anything good to come out of that, especially when the PPP henchmen are going around street corners talking to young people. And now it's good to talk to young people, but at least the coalition government did it in a very dignified way, meaningful way. Okay, just thought we remind our listeners about that. Third question: where has the impact of young persons not in education, employment, or training been most evident?
So life in villages, I would say, without hesitation, young people in villages, both on the coastland and in the hinterland, suffer first and they suffer most. And this is because once maybe they get away from the center, you know, they send teachers out there, but the teachers do not have the resources. And as you know very well, in 2024, how the teachers were treated. After 10 weeks on the streets, they were just given a pittance, which anyone, any minister who goes into some of those hinterland schools to see how the teachers live, especially teachers who have come from the coastland. And don't forget that, something like 80 or 85% of teachers are women. And most of those teachers are mothers who have children also in the schools where they were born or where they grew up or the regions of their residence. So it is a very unsatisfactory situation, which the PPP has been reluctant to deal with, as far as I'm concerned. So the impact of this absence of national youth policy is on the village, in the villages, in the hinterland locations, Barima Waini, Kuyuni Mazruni, Putara Separuni, and Rupanuni. And many of those children do not get a proper education to enable them to be employed. So the impact is in those villages, but also in rural villages and the coastland. So both the coastland and the hinterland suffer because once they don't get a proper education, they drop out. And the people are dropping out at a rate of 15 per day. Children are dropping out of school at a rate of 15 per day, per school day. In even countrywide and the coastal and hinterland. So there has to be a safety net. This was discovered even in 1968, soon after the PNC got into office, after the PNC-UF coalition got into office, after years of the PPP. The PPP had 7 years in office between 1957 and 1964. But by the time the PNC coalition got into office, they had to set up the youth corps to deal with youth unemployment. So it's an old problem. And this the youth corps metamorphosed into the Guyana National Service. And when the PPP got into office in 2000, they shut it down. They shut down the Guyana National Service. That is why when I got into office in 2015, I once again set up the youth corps to deal with the youth unemployment problem. And when the PPP got in, they shut it down again. So you can see the PPP has a mindset. The PPP has a serious attitude with empowering young people. And they prefer to give the young people handouts. Well, I suppose, they treat the young people as children. It's just like giving young people candy. Candy could satisfy you, could sweeten your mouth, but it can hurt your belly later on. And this is what the PPP has been doing. The impact of the PPP's policy is being felt particularly in the villages, not for the children of businessmen or rich people, not for children in some urban areas, but poor people. They suffer first. They suffer most. Poor people, especially those in the villages. It is very difficult for those people, particularly of indigenous descent and maybe in the coastal, Indian and African, particularly in the coastal villages. They suffer from this PPP policy of not having permanent institutions to deal with those who drop out of school, of the public education system. And they know about the dropout rate. They know about the failure rates. This is not something new. This is not party political propaganda. These are facts. And every day you can see the PPP scurrying to put together some ad hoc scheme. Ad hoc schemes are not working. You need permanent institutions. That is why I set up the Guyana Youth Corps. And that is why the Guyana National Service was created in 1973. And the PPP shut them down because the PPP doesn't want to empower a large, intelligent young population. It sounds like contradiction, but that is the reality. That is the way the PPP has been behaving.
Of course, that's the reality. That's how the PPP behaves. They prefer to go around, give little handouts, nothing to enhance the lives of those young people. Just they feel if they give a little handouts and clean drains and gutters and so forth, and that's all. That's all young people are worth under the PPP regime. Thanks for that. So our fourth question, President Granger, and let us welcome all of our listeners wherever you are. Good night and welcome to Anansi Web Education. Our fourth question, President Granger, is who are the social partners most needed to collaborate to provide full employment for young persons? And we're not talking about give them little crumbs to clean drains and gutters. Real partners we're talking about. Real employment.
Well, even before you get to the other social partners, I would say the PPP needs to sit down and speak with the opposition. The opposition is part of Guyana. The opposition is not a foreign force. It is not enemy. And the PPP has to change its mindset and sit down and speak with the opposition. There are people who support the opposition. So before you get to the social partners, the PPP need to sit down and shake hands with the opposition. They need to speak to the trade unions. The trade unions are an important and potentially effective force. Whichever trade union they belong to, whether it's GAWU, whether it's GLU, whether it's the TUC, whether it's the teachers union, speak to the people who represent workers. Speak to the GPSU in a cordial and friendly ways to see how they can solve together this problem. Those are the social partners, non-governmental organizations. Don't abuse the non-governmental organization. Red Thread has a voice. GHRE has a voice. American People's Association has a voice. They know what is going on the ground. Speak with them. Speak with civil society. Speak with the churches. Speak with the mandirs. Speak with the masjids. And have a national conversation on youth education and youth empowerment. I know some churches have very strong youth arms. I've spoken with young people. I've seen hundreds of people at some of these camporees organized by the SDA. I mean, in almost every SDA community, you see focus on young people. So you need to speak with these social partners so that we have a collaborative and comprehensive national effort to deal with the youth problem, the youth unemployment problem, the education problem, and the training problem. But it is not happening. And this is what the CARICOM Charter calls for. You have to speak. You can't do it on your own. It's your way or no way. Well, the days for that type of Stalinist approach are over. We now live in a democratic age, and people must be able to exchange views. The PPP does not have all of the answers. And, having ad hoc solutions, every now and then mobilizing army and soldiers from the army or policemen and giving them some T-shirt, and perhaps it looks good in the campaign posters, but it doesn't last long. You go back next Easter and the mess is there again. You go back after Diwali or Mashamani and the debris will still be there. There's no long-term solution, but the PPP is very happy with these short-term campaigns and giving people little handouts, and they feel that that is satisfactory, like giving candy to kids, but it does not provide long-term solutions to education, employment, and training problems. So I would say that the social partners are there because the social partners are aware of the young people, who are being caught up in antisocial behavior and ending up in jail. 6 to 7% of the prison population are young. And then you have special custodial institutions like the New Opportunity Corps and the Sapphire Detention Center for young people. So there is a youth crisis, and the PPP is not recognizing that it is a crisis. There are too many young people in jail when they should be in school. There are too many young people in the detention centers when they should be at work. And the PPP does not have the answer. The answer is not this national pathway, buckets and brooms thing. The answer is in setting up proper institutions like the Guyana Youth Corps, the Guyana National Service. And the PPP seems to be dead set against creating and setting up any permanent institutions. And they depend on ad hoc. You could go around to any village and give everybody $10,000, give every a little hamper, a black bag or something, and a little cash grant. That is not going to solve the problem. PPP has been up for 28 years, my friend. Not 28 days or 28 weeks, but 28 years. And the PPP has been fighting against any institution that can give long-term relief, provide long-term relief to the problem of youth employment, education, and training. It is clear that the PPP has a problem with providing a permanent solution to the problems affecting young people.
They have a serious problems. They seem, just for the optics, a little photo opportunity. They don't take care of the youths when they're out in the free world, so to speak, but they rush into the prisons after they imprison these youths. No jobs, no nothing, no proper employment creation. They have no training facilities, nothing, everything. And so their only way is to walk around in the street corners to have these sort of photo opportunities with these young men, attempting to brainwash these young men. And that's their policy. That's what they have for young people. Unlike what happened under the coalition and what happened under the PNC previous governments. This was under the coalition, where under your presidency, young persons were enlisted in the Guyana Youth Corps under the APNU AFC coalition administration, because you guys had a plan, a good plan, a decent plan for the youths of Guyana. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that under the PPP regime. Now, our final question for tonight, President Granger. How could young persons access better education, creative employment, and worthwhile training? And now, creative employment, worthwhile training. How can they do it?
I think you recognize that these words were taken from the CARICOM Charter, creative employment. And I think although the charter was written in 1997, they probably were thinking about this national pathway for workers cleaning up the highways. That's not creative employment. I think during the course of this discussion, we have clearly seen that the PPP has a problem, a mindset problem, the attitude to young people, that the PPP is never going to establish a service which can provide a safety net for young people who are dropping out of the education system, the public education system, at a rate of 15 per day. This is the problem that the PNC had when it took over from the PPP in 1968. It's the problem that the APNU had when it took over from the PPP in 2015. And it's a problem that persists today. Young people need a systematic approach to the problems. And we need to go back to the need for the PPP to sit down with the social partners, to sit down with the opposition as a political partner in running government, sit down with the social partners, particularly the trade unions and non-governmental organizations, civil society, churches and mandirs and the masjids. But it calls for a change in the mindset. This is not a winner-takes-all situation. This is the future of Guyana, and the PPP is not getting it. PPP lost the narrative. This is what perhaps Soviet Union used to do 50 years ago or 100 years ago, but it's not working. And what will happen is that we create more young people in prisons when they should be at work. We're losing a whole generation. We're losing development. We're losing the possibility of making Guyana a really rich country in terms of its education and its productive capabilities. So what could be done? I don't know what could be done to change the PPP's mindset, but we need to apply some pressure in accordance with the curriculum chart of civil society to provide proper education for the children. And it could be done. For example, you have 7 regions without proper tech work facilities. And the same regions that are most affected, region 1, 7, 8, and 9. There's no credible technical institution in those 4 regions. And the dropout rate is staggering. That is the word used by CARICOM, staggering. And they're thinking not only about Guyana, they're thinking about other countries, Belize, Barbados, and in the Caribbean. And so it is a regional problem. But for us in Guyana, we have the potential, and we need a government that thinks about people in front of projects, thinks about young people, which means thinking about the future. How could young people access better education and creative employment? You need to put pressure on the government to have a youth policy, not botheration, not just entertainment, but education and employment. Entertainment is good, but there's a saying the world is a child that prefers entertainment to education. Well, I don't accept that. We can't treat young people as children and keep entertaining them. We need to start educating them and employing them. And the PPP doesn't get it. The PPP just lost the plot in terms of the way young people are to be treated. Or any government with a bag full of money could go and share out money, but it calls for a different, mindset to set up institutions which take education, employment, and training seriously. And the PPP is not the organization to do that as it is presently constituted.
Certainly, the PPP is not the organization to do that. We see it, the evidence all over. The truth is, they just do not care about young people. They just do not care about people in general. However, President Granger, I'm glad that we were able to have this discussion, talking about young people, talking about creation of jobs, real jobs for young people. And let me take the opportunity to once again thank you. During your presidency, your government did exactly that, to work hand in hand with young people of Guyana. And not only that, the social partners as well. The evidence is quite clear what you and your government intended to do in a meaningful way for our young people. So thank you so much, President Granger, for today's program. I appreciate it again. And to all of our listeners, we thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day, Mr. Granger, and give our regards to the former First Lady, who knows, former First Lady, Sandra Marie Granger. I noticed you smiling there when I said, who knows, former First Lady. Thank you so much for your time, though, sir. As always, God bless.
Thank you and good night.
And let me see that smile again. Who knows? Who knows? Have a good God bless.
Thank you. Good night.
And to all of our listeners, thank you all so much. We'll be back next time, same place, right here. And the subject matter then will be who knows? Who knows? God bless you all. So long.
Small days is still on my mind. Small days is a good time. Neighbor and some little children. I met the singing and the dancing, I just really admire them. Small days is still on my mind. Small days is a good time. Neighbor and some little children.
Oh, Jesus Christ, if cost of living double, I don't know what happened. A pound of sugar is $300 already. Flour, everything gone up. Everything just raising. You gotta get about $40,000 for buy good ration. You gotta get 3 man now. A weekend man, a monthly man, and a fortnight man.